feeling well today. We'll get started. So first of all, I want to acknowledge it being October, it being an important awareness month to not only women suffer from breast cancer, obviously, but statistically, of course, much more. So I want to acknowledge the importance of this month to everyone, and especially to my wife, Wendy, and I want to thank her for all that she does for me and our family. And I will get started. This is my required address on the state of the city. First, I want to give a financial report, which I'll respond to further in writing for all of you and by a separate briefing where we can do some Q&A and follow up with media and others and yourselves. But here's a snapshot. This time last year, so end of August, we're 2 months behind on sales tax always in being able to report it. 19.2 million, we're at 20.6. We're at a difference favorably of 1.353 in collections of sales tax. That's a 7.03% uptick. I also checked with Mr. Crutchfield at the Sheriff's Office. They also are up. Not quite those numbers on the pair sales tax alone, but up. So revenue looks good. We're moving up favorably compared to last year. It would be hard for me to say, and I couldn't predict to you whether people are having to dig into their pocketbooks or savings to make that happen, because as we all know in this quirky economy of ours, the cost of goods has also gone up, but people are spending, and that should give you a good feeling, because it means people are not scared to spend and they're spending. And I expect, fingers crossed, but I would expect this holiday season to go very well for everybody. So that's a good sign. The national economy is showing significant improvement based on what I just said, but again, it's that quirky cost of goods being so high. So predictions remain all over the board. You also have a presidential election on the way, and that will cause lots of things that are hard to predict until that is over, either way. Louisiana legislature is threatening some big revenue changes to municipalities, and we'll be briefing you again separately on that. So I want to remind everybody that while I'm very happy about the 7.03% uptick in sales tax, and that's good for all of us, everybody that relies on it, we do need to wait and see how this legislature responds to this session that would involve affecting your sales tax. And in particular, some of the items would be big, 15% or more changes to us to the negative. So we'll have to work on that with our delegation and make sure that we think through that properly. I think with that said, when you hear me say 7.03% up, I know fire and police will be happy. They know to pay attention to when I give that kind of number. The other side of that is, and why I would still say austere spending is the order of the day, is because of these other unknowns, so we'll see. Because of these projections, we must get, I believe, lean and connect our quality of life. Connect our quality of life, services, and businesses reimagined like never before. And by doing that, I mean that we need to stick to those things that I've always highlighted you that are important: crafting truly effective and easily identifiable public systems and structures directly to citizens. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about connecting. And you're going to hear me talk a lot about seamless, easy connections that we need to be making in a multitude of new ways. So both our services to our citizens as consumers of what we do as government, but also connecting business and the whole region with itself better. And we can be a driver and part of that. And of course, we need to be responsible caretakers of public things and infrastructure. It doesn't mean just be caretakers in the sense of making sure we're keeping up with not deferring maintenance too long and doing all that, which was a problem. And in the last 4 years, I feel like there was some deferred items that were really serious, especially with the utility, and we're catching that up. But I also think that you've got to identify new, really expressive change in infrastructure funding and spending, and we'll be identifying that. Again, that takes making connectivity on every scale, every spectrum, in every sector as easy as possible. That's what we need to be about. So how? We do it by forming partnerships and increasing the partnerships we have with LSUA and others. We do it by innovation. We do it by doing as much as we can in higher education that is budgetarily sound for us. We need to be spending money in higher ed, and we need to be spending money to help our school board do its job. We need to be making those interventions in areas of education. Educational attainment is a challenge for us in this community, and educational attainment is the biggest obstacle to growth in people leaving poverty that there is, and we need to be about that. It may not have always been a thought of the city to be so directly involved because we have a separate system that governs it, but in every place in this country, the municipalities in the area, especially if there's a core municipality among a lot of rurality, that is a job. And we have to rethink it because it's the only thing that's going to move us again toward better connectivity, getting people into better and higher living wage, and then they're able to participate in this community. So again, that's every scale, every spectrum. We need to be about that. So a unified approach is critical. We need to all not only be talking more often, but then agreeing on a plan and all acting in our parts to bring that plan forward. What is the biggest problem that I see, the biggest threat I see in this community? Unfortunately, I would say it's the biggest threat that any community is seeing. And while there is a word factfulness, there has never been, perhaps we're coining it, the opposite. But in our society, we are living with a certain degree of factlessness, a state of factless things happening all the time. And that is a threat to this community and others. And I'm going to start with you on the council. You are constantly attacked when doing a good job with things. And people may hear me say that I think this is the best council relationship I've had, the best working relationship anyway. That does not mean that we did not have great council persons in the past, Chuck, people with whom you served, people with whom I served. We had some giants. In my own life, I'd always thought of Harry and Charles Smith as two giants, Harry Silver and Charles Frederick Smith. I'm sure others would have other names. So those would be personal ones for me. What I'm saying about this current relationship is sometimes I hear out there that there's fighting, and there had been in years past, and it's sort of strange to me. I think more of what it is sometimes in the public people are tending and fighting with you or pitting us against each other. I don't feel there's any fighting with us. So I wanted to acknowledge and say that. Again, part of factlessness is just things being said and repeated that just have no grounding in the truth. From past mistakes I made that I own, and I didn't do enough to protect, one of the most critical and important relationships with me is with a good friend, Myron Lawson. And I have often in my life looked back on that, and this isn't the first time I've said it, and had regrets about it. The things that we could have done together better, more often, as I said earlier, more effectively, had I developed that relationship better. And I have to own my part of that, and I have regrets about that. And it is part of what informs me about not only defending you on this dais, the people to whom I look right now, but also that we importantly point out to the public what we are doing together and what's right. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. In a way, I see some of the biggest threats to our city as the threats to you being unable to do your job or having obstacles placed in your way as council persons that is not merited and certainly is not grounded in anything that is factual or fair. That's life, and that's the current state of things and affairs today, but it isn't right. I grew and learned from the mistakes of my past about how to deal with things. You often think of the need to correct things that were wrong in the city, but there's sometimes a better way to do it. Some of our pastors would say you can disagree, but you can do so agreeably. And that is something that everybody should learn, particularly those in this room and particularly with our partners. We have the chamber here. We have the school board represented here. We have LSUA represented here. These people depend on us to not just get along for the sake of optically looking good in front of the media. They depend on it because they get a benefit from when we get along, that we are talking, working together, and making things happen. They indeed need us to. And I'm proud to say that we do. And I want to openly say that, and I want to thank all of you for the work that you do to make that happen. And I know not everybody's here, but I include them in this statement. I feel like this relationship is the best one I've personally experienced, Chuck. I can't speak for everyone else. And again, I could have said that about past councils, but I have to own my own part in whatever it was that didn't work then. But that's where we are today, and it's a good place to be. So having learned from that, I'm going to fight for you because of that. And when you can't, I'm gonna. And I'm going to let people know, and I'm trying to do a little of it in your meetings to help make things run smoothly. We continue to have probably the freest, or at least what's allowed to happen here, of any other organizations I look at. So while there may be some consternation from people because of change that's coming and the disallowance of people to just outright obstruct your meetings, that's not really a reflection of the First Amendment being hampered anyway. It's a reflection of running a meeting properly. And the childishness has to stop. And that's part of my defending you to do your job. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to defend you, and I'm going to give you the space and room in whatever way we can from the administration to get your job done. The threat of modern times is different. It creeps into everything. It divides friends and family. I'm sure we've all experienced that. It destroys trust and community fabric. It feeds on fear and complacency. I'm going to tell you guys a folk tale that is for the folks at home as much as anybody, because a few of you in here will have heard me say it before, so bear with me. But there was a young person who went about town slandering all the town leaders. And one day he went to the town meeting and he stated that he realized he had been wrong about what he was saying. And he checked his facts, and he had been operating only on rumors and gossip. And so he asked the town council for forgiveness. One of the wise older council members said, I'm not sure you really understand what has happened or transpired over this time that you've been doing this. And he said, I can't speak for all of us, but for me, I will forgive you, but I'll only forgive you on one condition. And he said, I want you to go home and I want you to take a feather pillow and cut it up and scatter all the feathers to the wind. And after you do so, come return to us. We'll talk about it. So the young man was sort of puzzled by that, but he thought this is going to be way easier than I thought. So he goes home and he tears the pillow up and he throws the feathers out and the wind carries them away. And he was so happy because this penance seemed so light. He went back to the town elders and he said, I've done it. I quickly cut up that pillow. I scattered it. I'm here. It's 2 weeks later. Am I now forgiven? And the wise old council leader said, just one more thing. Now go gather up all those feathers. And he said, but that's impossible. The wind scattered them. And he said, precisely. And though you may truly wish to correct what was sowed and lies and things told to people, it is impossible to repair all the damage that can flow out of what happened. So your words out there in the marketplace, spreading hate and all of those things, have an effect. And that has an effect on you here. That same thing. By constantly denigrating and tearing the city down or tearing the region down, we are hurting ourselves. It is terribly difficult to market an area and say you won't change and we want things to be better if we, as a community, are part of tearing ourselves down needlessly. So maybe you've heard that folktale that I just said, but we are quick to believe what others say about someone. We are quick to accept the news that's contained in print and television, sometimes tabloidishly stated in print and other journalism. We are ready to assume the worst. Smart folks like Neil deGrasse Tyson would tell you that we're actually programmed to accept those things. It's in our psychology. So we'll post and we feverishly write without thinking about local business, and maybe you've had one bad meal somewhere and you're quick to go online and talk about that bad meal. And you're quick to forget that someone bet their whole life savings on opening that restaurant. And maybe they had a rough go of that first month. It takes a minute to get these things all in order, right? And so we're quick to go do that. And then that spreads like wildfire. And it's very hard to go pick up the feathers that get launched out into the wind when that occurs. Even with public servants, the same thing can happen. And does, and did. I can't tell you how much we had to, I think, correctly and quickly address the idea that you could pass a tax without a vote. What a silly thing. You're not empowered to do that. You can't do that. Not in this democracy, thankfully. Those are unfortunate things, and they hurt us all when that engagement happens. But we all have to do better to engage everybody who's in this room, every stakeholder in this room, to do better. I guess I'm saying we all allow it. We all have to own this together to make a change. But if we don't stop throwing those feathers and tearing down the city and start reconnecting ourselves, we're going to feel like that young man who thought his penance was so light until he got back to the town elder meeting. So how is this about the state of our city? Nothing is more about it as this prescription is for our city. It is about, as Reddix Washington said, I read it earlier today, I don't know if it was posted yesterday, unity, transparency, and action. Unity, transparency, and action. So I'm going to call that UTA for today. So when I say UTA, I mean unity, transparency, and action. And this is how successful cities navigate and will navigate in the future of misinformation. They will have to unify around properly vetted plans. And after they measure, Chuck, maybe they measure more than once. Maybe you measure thrice, but you're going to cut once. And that cut once is the act part of UTA. Unity, transparency, and action. To do this, we have to reimagine both how we reach our citizens and re-engage modern media and marketing in a shared burden of building the good in our community while reporting on things accurately, of course, and without any influence from government except the demand for excellent journalism. Last night I talked to two rather famous retired journalists here, at least famous by our standards here at home. And we lamented on some things and the changes, and particularly not both of them were in print media. One was not necessarily, but you know, if you were fond of print at any time, you stay that way until, I guess at my age, I still am. I can see some people in the room who may not be. Not many, y'all are all close to my age. Maybe Daniel over there. But we had we lamented some things, but we also thought about how great a time it is too. And they were hopeful about that. But one of them said to me, you know, the First Amendment is great, and that's what everybody quotes about media. I said, well, of course. As a lawyer, I do too. But he said it carries a responsibility. So there is that freedom, but with that freedom comes responsibility. And I think we've been falsely convinced in some ways, like Commissioner Van Dyke said from this lectern the other day, that he admonished us from this lectern. I don't know if everybody has seen his talk. It's powerful. I'd encourage anyone to watch it, no matter what you think of it at the end. It is something to see. But he was admonishing people about seeing something and saying something. We talked about it originally in America to do with probably terrorism at first. See something, say something. If you see something that looks funny, do something about it. But it's so much bigger than that, right? Crime. The need to partner with our educational system better. All those are see something, say something. But I fear it's no longer an action people take, Reddix, for your UTA, the action part that comes. I think it's just simply words that people say. See something, say something. And that's certainly what the commissioner was talking about. We have been conditioned to mind our own business, quote unquote. We have been conditioned to mind our own business, which is exactly and precisely the recipe for disaster in a community. Minding your own business about community concerns, large-scale concerns, is precisely the recipe for disaster. And I think we find ourselves in that place today as a society. What's the cure? Unity, transparency, and action. We are responsible for so much, Deborah, in our region and city as we take steps together. We're not just responsible for Alexandria. There's a whole area, there's the city represented in some of the major connecting items within the city, roads, and you can see the different districts and neighborhoods. But if you really think about the 150,000 people that drive through Alexandria probably from Monday to Friday every day, and really there's a larger number, somewhere between 300 plus thousand and 415,000 people would be in what we would call the large service area, airport service area, hospitals, et cetera. I think this number, when I built this slide, this was years ago, I think that number has dropped. That's not a good thing. And that number has dropped for lots of reasons, but it has a lot to do with this sliding away of our, at one time, great healthcare advantage, competitive advantage. We need to get that up. And we do that through partnerships with LSUA. We do that through partnerships with our education community partners. We're responsible for more than the city. You are responsible for more than Alexandria. So am I. Transparency is not just a government requirement. It is a community responsibility. Now more than ever. Now more than ever. Because every citizen is now armed with the immediate ability to make news. For good or bad, but nonetheless immediate. We all share in transparency now. And for the first time in our history, on this planet, we share in transparency in a new and unique way, at least for the last decade or so. And getting more each day. I would say that statement increases in its effect every day. So on the other hand, and kind of seemingly paradoxically, anyone who knows very little, including nothing about a subject, about which they purport to be an expert, will say anything online, anything at all. And it'll be liked, and it'll be shared, and it'll be followed, and it'll be amened for being nonsense, which is strange to me, but is nonetheless where we are. Neil deGrasse Tyson said this of the factual world in social media as it confronts the future of AI. Go back one so we could, I think that's Don Lemon he's talking to, but this is the actual interview. That's Neil deGrasse Tyson. Some of you who are like astrophysics, like Darren working the camera back there, you might know who he is. But he's a pretty famous thinker today. So go to the next one. So Dr. Tyson said of this that once fake news and the deep fakes that go along with it become such a risk to those who normally repeat it that they do not know what is real or unreal at all anymore, that risk will make it so unreliable even to them, and he said this, that it will be the coffin for fake news. This was his actual post, but he said more in the interview with Don Lemon, which any of you can Google and check out. In this, he said, when AI perfects the deep fakes of people, places, and things, I don't know when he said this, but I would say it's really close now. I don't know if people have been following, but there are AI deep fakes about the LSU football game that are so convincing by both coaches that you can see them say it and know that they would not say those things. But if you look at their mouth movement and everything else, they look real. So what Dr. Tyson said is even those who previously believed in the fake news, they'll think their fake news has been faked. And so at that moment, he's an astrophysicist, remember, there'll be a tear in the space-time continuum and it will open up and swallow all social media from the internet. That's a little bit hyperbolic. He's a black hole guy, so that's what he's referencing there. But his point is nonetheless interesting. So our fake news and the deep fakes that go along with it become a risk. And maybe at some point they become such a risk that people stop believing it. The other side of that is then what happens? Then what happens? He went on to talk about the U.S. having free speech, a great thing, and he went on to talk about a failed educational system, Ms. Franklin, a bad thing, a bad thing. And he talked about how fake news would run its course until this moment he thinks the black hole of something will swallow it up. I'm not sure about that. But he was talking about content news where it is purposefully false. Not you got it wrong. Not a reporter was doing a job, missed one fact, and just got it wrong. That happens to all of us in every aspect of our lives. So I'm going back to Reddix's instincts that I shared both on my own social media and earlier with this idea of UTA. And I would like to think I influenced him into this somehow. I don't know. That's not a fact, so I can't say it is a fact. But I'd like to think so. What I do know is how working together, both the relationship with the council and my office, and how working together is able to change things, accomplish more, get more places torn down, deal with more things in a challenging district that he has the responsibility and duty to advance its causes and needs and take care of. District 1. And so my post earlier today, which I wasn't really going to be part of this, but it's on my own personal social media, was about District 1 being a bellwether for the city. That if we could go out and cure the ills in District 1, the specific problems it's having versus all other districts, and the same problems are in all districts, they just happen to be very pronounced. And it's related to educational non-attainment, and it's related to poverty, and it's related to disinvestment in infrastructure. If those things could be addressed powerfully there, then that recipe could be spread all across the city and work. And so it's a place to study how to best address those things. But you know what it takes? It takes a leader willing to work together with an administration. There's a point I'm making in all this about how when the two branches work together, things get done. When people out there in the fake news world tell you that the only thing that should define whether you're a good legislator is if you fight the administration, that's nonsense. How would that ever work? When all of you run, everybody runs and says how they're going to work together and make change. But if your real motive is to then cause only trouble and fighting, well, then that's really what it was all about. And Alexandria, Deborah, I'm afraid, has had in my lifetime, and I only keep referencing her because her husband was our longtime mayor. I have always noted that we as a community have not been the best about supporting each other in business and restaurants and all these things. And I see heads nodding because all of you know it, because we've all talked about it. It's different from a Lafayette or another place. And we have to be better as a community about connecting with each other in those things. We don't have any room for those errors. Now, it may sound harsh, and someone could try to quote that out of context and say that the mayor is denigrating his own city when he's telling us not to. Not quite the contrary. But it is something I have personally witnessed and seen my life here. And I think that we have had some corners turned on it and seen the light of better things and then slid back into it. So I'm making this point of continue to relate to you about the need for truthful information because this is my thesis. The communities that win in the future will win because of unity, transparency, and action. The state of our city is therefore tied to getting this UTA right. So I understand the political dynamics. Some of you are saying, why do you keep focusing on Reddix? We're all doing things to help our community. We're all doing things in our districts. You are. Exactly. You all are. But I have to note that he is currently harnessing the power of communications in the modern way. And there's nothing wrong with noting that. Not all of us do, myself included. It's about connecting. So that simple UTA, unity, transparency, action, is a great marketing connector. We spend a lot of money on marketing and looking at those things, and funnily enough, he didn't see some of the stuff I see, and that's right in the heart of it. That's right in the heart of what we need to do. So he captured an idea that is something we've been talking about, something that I try to say to all of us about reconnecting this community, using the power we have to make us jump forward. And I do appreciate that you are all working at this, including those who are not here today. You're doing this by how much more we talk to each other. You're doing this by making sure that you review, do your homework, and make plans ahead of time. You have deeper discussions in council meetings, especially at budget times, than we've had in the past. We have deeper discussions through the briefings that I offer as well. And then you come together and vote. And when you come together and vote, because you've done the work I just outlined, you're then attacked for that, as though the vote just occurred in a vacuum right at that moment, as opposed to the talking and communicating and doing the work. So if a candidate is running on change but thrives on the same, and by that I mean division and confusion, they clank around loudly. They clank loudly all around, making noise. And they do it so loudly, the clanking, that they get you off track sometimes. They get us off track in the administration. You become accustomed to reacting to the loud clanking instead of staying on the plan that everyone adopted through years of work. They make you doubt. They make you doubt. So loudly they convince you on this body, and yet, and so our friends at home as well. Let me say that too. So loudly do they clank that also people at home can be convinced of that sometimes. That because you do your job and ultimately vote on an item, you are somehow doing my personal bidding or the bidding of the administration instead of what's right for the city. If you think about how crazy an idea that is, it would mean that the new definition of whether you're doing your job would be to always counteract or countermand what we're doing, and therefore what would happen with the city? It would go nowhere. But that is what some people want, and you just need to know that. And in my defense of you and in my commitment to do so, that is true, whether you like it or not, that some people are clanking around loudly just to get you off track. So when you run for office, and in particular for mayor, you have to put out a plan. You have to put out a written plan, and people vote on that plan. And if people vote you in office, what did they vote for? The plan that we are all working. So as soon as you get in, when people tell you that that's not what I want, usually the people attacking you for that are guess who? People who either want to run for office or are involved in politics. I've got to tell you at home, if you're watching, this is a different room today, but a lot of regulars that come to our council meetings are not, they may be quoted as by the media as concerned citizen all the time. But one more level of homework for the media and you'd find politician, in politics, in campaigns, organizing to thwart you from your duties and what you do. That's how democracy works too, by the way. You get to clank around loudly. And sometimes it's, in fact, oftentimes it's for the better. Clanking around loudly causes discussions. It's a free marketplace of ideas. It leads to all kind of new things that we need to be focused on. But I don't want you to get convinced of doubt in the good work that you know you do by the flat earthers. Continue to do the good work that you know is right. I'll turn to Neil deGrasse Tyson one more time. He gave a rather perfectly eloquent discussion of how science works. It's pretty neat. So first of all, before I say this, for all of you believers in X species, I'm not attacking your belief in animals and other things that may exist that we have not yet discovered. As a matter of fact, we discover new species all the time. So no attack. But a guy wrote to Neil deGrasse Tyson and said, Dr. Tyson, do you think there's a woodland primate? I won't name it, but if you can't figure it out, I'm sorry. There's a woodland primate that is roaming around in the woods of North America. What do you think about that? Do you believe it? And he said, well, I don't know that I do or don't. What I would say is if there was a woodland primate that did that, there would need to be a male and a female. It's a primate. They'd need to have children. You'd see evidence of that. There would be much more evidence of them eating and living, et cetera. So while I'm not saying there's not one, the science doesn't tell me there is. And that's all he said. Sad for him. That same nice guy that wrote him to ask that question has now called him the most closed-minded idiot that ever lived. And that was the next post from the guy. Well, I should have known you were a closed-minded moron. And so Dr. Tyson calmly explained, okay, so that's not how it works. So if you have evidence that the woodland primate exists, then bring that evidence forward and we can look at that against the facts and see. But if you have no evidence and all you're asking me to do is say it's true because of the absence of a thing, I can't do that. That's not how science works. And that's what's happening in communities across our country. I'm not the only mayor that's spending this much time talking about getting facts right, doing the work, because what's coming, guys, is much, this is why I'm telling you this. If you think it's bad today, before it gets better, it's going to be much worse. The things you will see that are said that people allegedly did, it's going to get worse, so be prepared. So this is also an indictment of our educational system, that people don't know basic science, that kids aren't learning basic scientific method, how we come to know things. And I think that that is something we have to really think about. We have to be part of breaking that cycle. We've got to connect people. And what I'm proposing to you that Alexandria becomes and adopts today is to make connections among its people, citizens, what we offer as a product of bundled services, what APD does, what everyone does, the easiest connections of any city, anywhere, period. That's the challenge I lay down today. We become as advanced in technology and the use of those things as any city out there. And if you say we can't do it, oh yes, we can. In fact, we are perfectly sized to do this. Just big enough to have the resources to do it, just small enough to be able to make the deep change it takes to do it and measure it along the way. We also happen to be right above I-10, right in the so-called safe zone, although we've been punched a couple of times, but folks who are selling insurance all over Louisiana will start looking more and more. This is a competitive advantage we have. We get techie, we get connectivity, and we start marketing this geography we've always said we had, this center of the state. We have it. We're out of the biggest part of the danger zone. There is going to be more and more people who cannot keep investing in the same risk model. We don't see these storms and events going away anytime soon. This is an opportunity, and it fits quite neatly with our opportunity to reinvigorate our health care once competitive advantage. Why? Techie. It's driven by technology. You've got a partner in LSUA who's ready to do it. They're getting students over there. This ought to be a marriage made in heaven, that we got to quit dating and courting, and we got to get to the altar on this. We've got to get it done. This is critical for us. So, if you want to get to continuing the marriage metaphor, divorce from poverty and crime and community malaise, that cycle has to be broken, and we need to start reinvesting in those things. Next slide, Mike. So one of the ways to do that, and that's what I'm outlining to you now, is if you want to be resilient and you want to harness this so-called unity, transparency, and action, we have something we already do really well right now. In a previous administration of ours, we developed Alex Connects as part of a Smart Alex, our doing things smarter, streamlining services. This was a Q alert system, still is. We're getting those pieces back where it's running really well again, and it's going to get even better. But what I'm proposing to you today is that this is a Q alert system. So you make complaints, it steps up instead of down, so it goes to the first person responsible. If not handled, a Q alert works where it goes up the chain, and eventually, and it has not happened, it would theoretically, I guess, get to me or someone in my office if it's not resolved ahead of time. What I propose is that this becomes way different than a simple Q alert system. What I think that we need to create with Alex Connects is something much beyond just a Q alert. This thing needs to connect community services, the events that are happening. It needs to be customizable. It needs to be where everyone can have that app and make it do what they are interested in doing. But more than anything, it needs to provide factual information, official from the city in real time. In real time. And so I'm pitching to you today that the state of your city depends on the degree to which we handle and harness the technology that already exists but of the future. And that is going to be how well we connect our services to the people you serve. You can think lazily like we're living in the past and it's going to be like it used to be. It's not going to be, guys. It's not going to be. It's things that at my age are way beyond my understanding. This stuff is happening and moving really fast. So, what did we do to fit this model? We have reinvigorated our small business assistance. We held our business seminar, Alexandria Business Seminar and Summit. We held that in October. There were lots of different pieces to learn again and re-engage people about. We're going to continue that more often. We want to optimize and reimagine our Alex Connects to graduate from a Q alert program to an interactive, customizable community connector across all lines: public safety, economic development, permitting, community services and events, emergency services and news. We have launched and will continue pitching to you the relaunch of our utility into economic development. You have an asset that is underutilized in economic development that you can use. You have an asset that has been roundly attacked falsely, at least for the last year and 3/4 of me coming back, but there were issues. It was on the verge of an existential crisis when we came back. It is not today. You are hovering today somewhere around 3 and all the competitors in the state. 3 as in lowest. Those are facts. You don't have to take my word for it. It's measured. You can get 2 other groups to give you the data on it that are independent of the city. And if you want to add your audits, 3. Why don't we talk about that? Why does media spend so much time denigrating something that is a powerful tool you have to attract business, to give people a business deal, if you will, if they'll locate here for an amount of time, and you ratchet it down, right? If you locate a tech business, even if you cannot have many employees in that. Right now, if you locate, Chuck, a big business, you spend in capital expenditures $2 or $3 million, you can get this deal. Or you employ so many people, you can get this deal. What we would propose is, let's add to that if it's a small business, but it's within areas that we identify, right? Technology, healthcare, those kinds of things. Let's add that to the incentive list and use this tool that we have. We achieved a fire rating 1. You've heard us talking about that. That was important. We are launching our CSOs with Safe Alex to increase our ability to community police, even in the face of the hard-to-hire positions that cities across America face today with hiring police. Another one that I know make at least one person happy in the room who's sitting over there, this gentleman, former councilman, 0 toleration for litter. I'm just telling y'all, I'm going to be the bad guy on the litter stuff. I can't take it anymore. It's just become a personal issue, and it's got to stop. And that that Jackson and Bolton corridor has cleaned up. I just drove it on my way here again, and I can't tell you how different it looks than it did 6 months ago. And there's others. And we're going to have to go identify them. It will be easy for any of you in this room to go drive to a place right now and see a bunch of litter and go, you didn't get this spot. I get it. But tell Alex Connects about it. Tell Alex Connects. It's your day, Reddix, but this is a Reddix post here. He finally wisened up and used Alex Connects himself. Instead of calling the administration, he just used it. How fast did that happen? Couple days. Look. Kind of blew up the slide myself. I should have gotten someone a little tech. Yeah, y'all can give it a hand. That's not bad work for a couple of days. He didn't use Reddix or any of that. I tell people all the time, if you use Alex Connects, it's faster than calling me, because then I have to then reroute it the other way. Alex Connects works up this way, where the people who have to do it are worried about it going to the next level, a supervisor, that it didn't get done. So there it is, right in your face. Information is and will become, in my opinion, a sort of new currency for our future. It will be a currency in the future. And the quality and quantity of processing information will become its own metric for successful business, for cities, for individuals. And I believe it will be its own fight against the factlessness of today. And it will lead to a future where, once again, we back up what we say. We back up and produce what we say we have to back up and produce. I want to be a leader on that bubble. I don't know about you guys. I want to be right on the front of the bubble as we see the world become that competitive with information that empowers people, that's smart, and that's accurate and truthful. Because, of course, that remains the other side. Bad information leads to bad consequences. People unprepared for a storm. People told to do something wrong in the middle of a crisis because someone wants to divide. That happens in our nation right now. That is insanity. So that's the bubble I want to be on the front of. If we place this easy connection, qualitative connection, and provider of the best bundling of services and quality of life possible for us at the forefront, we will have a competitive place and a competitive advantage in this future that we face. The state of the city is once again sound. For it to remain so, we need an experienced team of committed leaders to move forward with unity, transparency, and indeed action. And we have that. We have that. I feel I have it with you. God bless you. God bless Pineville and Alexandria, our parish, our state, all the municipalities in the area and the United States of America. Thank you for allowing me to serve with you. I'm going to work harder and harder each day. I'm committed to you as a team. You keep doing what you're doing and don't let people thwart you with nonsense. You know what nonsense looks like. Stop tolerating it. We don't have time for it. Let's get people connected and let's get this place rolling. Thank you. God bless.